President Lee Jae-myung vowed to tighten economic cooperation with the United Arab Emirates in defense, renewable energy, and AI as part of efforts to cultivate new growth drivers for the two nations. Regarding the recent depreciation of the Korean won, South Korea's foreign and deputy prime minister says the government is working with the key market players to address currency volatility. However, no intervention measures are seen as an option at the moment. And a diplomatic row between China and Japan over Taiwan has deepened, with Beijing now reportedly banning all imports of Japanese seafood. President Lee Jae-myung met with the business and government leaders from South Korea and the UAE in Abu Dhabi on Wednesday, calling for expanded private sector cooperation to further strengthen the two countries' special strategic partnership. Our top office correspondent Song Yu-jin leads us tonight.
On the final day of his state visit to the United Arab Emirates, South Korean President Lee Jae-myung shared his vision to take the two countries' 45-year diplomatic ties to the next level.
두바이의 랜드마크 부르즈 칼리파에는 우리 한국 기업의 땀과 열정이 녹아 있고 양국 협력의 상징인 바라카 원전은 4호기까지 정상 가동되고 있습니다. 아크 부대에서 또 천궁2에 이르기까지 안보, 방산 분야 등의 상호 협력 역시도 눈부신 성과를 내고 있습니다.
At the South Korea-UAE Business Roundtable on Wednesday, the president outlined strategic areas he believes will elevate bilateral cooperation: clean energy and defense, cutting-edge technology, and culture.
UAE의 태양광 발전 잠재량과 한국의 첨단 배터리 기술력을 결합한 에너지 전환 협력은 2050년 탄소 중립 공동 달성 그리고 친환경 신산업 육성에 크게 기여할 것이 분명합니다. 방산 분야에서도 공동 개발, 기술 협력, 현지 생산까지 협력의 수준을 제고하여
artificial intelligence, clean and renewable energy, and sustainable development. These are goals I know we both care about deeply.
In the field of advanced technology, President Lee highlighted cooperation centered on artificial intelligence. A key outcome of his visit this time was an agreement to jointly establish and operate hyperscale data centers in the UAE.
우리 한국은 HBM 등 반도체 기술과 EPC 설비 역량을 바탕으로 UAE의 2031년 인공지능 허브 도약을 위한 가장 신뢰 있는 파트너가 될 것입니다.
Lee also pointed to expanding cultural exchanges from food and beauty to content to deepen people-to-people ties. Wednesday's event brought together around 50 government and business representatives from both countries, including Samsung Electronics Chairman Lee Jae-yong and Hyundai Motor Group Executive Chair Chung Hee-sun. Song Yu-jin, Arirang News.
Staying in Abu Dhabi, the two leaders of South Korea and the UAE earlier on Tuesday announced a joint declaration for cooperation on AI, nuclear energy, and the defense industry. Our President Office correspondent Yoon Jung-min has this report.
Pomp and circumstance were evident at the UAE presidential palace, with the summit beginning with an air show, a 21-gun salute, and a traditional performance. A sentiment of cooperation was shared between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan.
확고한 신뢰와 상호 존중 그리고 형제의 정신을 기반으로 앞으로 어떤 외부의 상황 변화가 있더라도 결코 흔들리거나 후퇴하지 않도록 더욱 견고하게 발전시켜 나가기를 바랍니다.
The special strategic partnership between Korea and the UAE has been bearing fruit in many areas. The economy, energy, high technology, culture and defense are only to start with.
7 MOUs were signed following the hour-long talks, with a focus on AI, nuclear technology, and the space industry. The leaders also announced a joint statement reflecting the UAE's roadmap to become a world-leading nation by its centennial anniversary in 2071, and South Korea's role as its key partner along the way. South Korea also plans to take part in the UAE's Stargate project to build a large-scale AI data center based on their energy mix strategies. The two countries will also expand cooperation on the semiconductor supply chain. On defense technology, bilateral cooperation will be expanded to joint development, technology cooperation, and local production.
This cooperative model will help increase the possibility of our exporters securing orders in the defense industry worth over $15 billion.
Discussions also included building a K-city in the UAE, as well as cooperation on culture, education, and people-to-people exchanges.
Having wrapped up his state visit to the UAE, President Yi's next stop is Egypt for an official visit, where he will be sitting down with the Egyptian president and will lay out his Middle East vision during a speech at a university. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Abu Dhabi.
And in line with their leaders' pledge for deeper cooperation, Seoul and Abu Dhabi are teaming up to take AI-enabled next-generation nuclear technology to global markets. Our economics correspondent Moon Ji-young has more.
South Korea and the United Arab Emirates are expanding their cooperation in the nuclear sector, not just at home, but with an eye toward global markets. Following Tuesday's summit, the two countries signed a series of agreements aimed at bringing next-generation AI-powered nuclear technologies to projects in third countries. According to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Resources, the two sides exchanged memorandums of understanding covering nuclear cooperation as well as broader trade. A key agreement was signed between the Korea Electric Power Corporation and the UAE's Emirates Nuclear Energy Corporation. The two sides committed to strengthening collaboration on advanced nuclear technologies, including artificial intelligence, operational simulation systems, and the digitalization of power plant data. By integrating these digital and AI tools, the two companies aim to enhance the safety and efficiency of nuclear operations. They also plan to take the successful Barakah nuclear power plant model and expand it as a joint export package to third country markets. Barakah is the first Korean-built nuclear plant operating overseas.
These MOUs marks a shift from simple export to joint development, joint production, and even entry into global market. So in nuclear energy, the Barakah nuclear power plant has already become a major successful story, and now both sides want to expand into small modular reactor SMRs or nuclear AI and joint bid a global market.
In addition to nuclear cooperation, Seoul and Abu Dhabi also broadened their economic partnership. Seoul's Trade Ministry and Abu Dhabi's Foreign Trade Ministry signed an MOU regarding the administration of the Korea-UAE Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Once it takes effect, an Economic Cooperation Committee will be launched immediately to identify high-demand areas for bilateral cooperation and to streamline the implementation of the agreement. Moon Ji-young, Arirang News.
And the South Korean commander-in-chief met the AK unit, a Korean military contingent stationed in the UAE, while in Abu Dhabi. And meeting some 50 troops at a hotel in the city, President Lee Jae-myung thanked them for their hard work, saying their mission helps defend peace in the Middle East and the world. He said he appreciated their dedication and sacrifice, adding their work elevates the status of Korea and contributes to protecting the lives of the Korean people. Lee was accompanied by First Lady Kim Il-kyung, both of them wearing AK unit uniforms. The unit was launched in 2011 to carry out various missions, including the training of UAE troops and protecting Korean nationals in the region. From rising dollars to the won to the recently finalized trade with the U.S., South Korea's economy faced headwinds from all angles. And the finance minister today sat down with reporters to take questions. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
Finance Minister Koo Yoon-chul stated on Wednesday that while the government is coordinating with key market players to address currency volatility, no additional intervention measures are being considered at this time. Speaking with the reporters at the government complex in Sejong, Koo addressed the recent depreciation of the Korean won among other issues. He noted that despite a projected current account surplus of 88 to 90 billion US dollars, a shortage of dollars persists due to significant capital outflows. Koo emphasized that the Ministry of Economy and Finance is prioritizing stability for importers and exporters and managing inflation. Regarding a specific target exchange rate, Koo maintained a cautious stance, stating that rates are determined by the market and are not for the government to define. On trade and the recently finalized trade deal with the U.S., Koo stressed the urgency of the Special Act on Investment to the U.S. This bill, instead of ratification by the National Assembly, would pave the way for the budget to provide the promised $350 billion investment to the U.S. He said that the bill must be submitted to the National Assembly within the month of November to ensure the application of a 15% automobile tariff starting November 1st. Regarding the investment, Koo suggested a fund structure would likely serve as the vehicle, with management details currently under discussion between the government and the Assembly. Meanwhile, he also addressed the Lee administration's push for investment in stocks rather than real estate. Koo vowed to push for tax incentives for long-term minority shareholders early next year. He explained the ministry is weighing options such as benefits through individual savings accounts or lower dividend tax rates for long-term holdings. He clarified that the focus is on rewarding individual minority investors rather than major shareholders. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The world's largest company by value, NVIDIA, is set to announce its earnings report on Wednesday local time after the market closes. The company's earnings and guidance could greatly affect global stock markets, as it's strongly tied to the global AI infrastructure. Park Jun-han has more.
Global investors are eyeing the U.S. market because NVIDIA, both the world's largest and most highly valued chipmaker, is set to report quarterly earnings after the session ends on Wednesday. According to Reuters, the options for NVIDIA's stock indicate that today's earnings could move its price either up or down by 7%. This percentage swing could affect the company's value by $320 billion US dollars, as the company's market cap is now trading at $4.41 trillion, or 6,474 trillion Korean won. NVIDIA currently accounts for 8% of the S&P 500, where the United States' 500 most valuable companies are combined on one index. This dominance extends far beyond the U.S. market, as the company sits at the core of the AI ecosystem, accounting for over 90% of high-performance GPUs, crucial in building the global AI infrastructure. A sales trader interviewed by Reuters said that while the stock itself could move up or down by 7%, the narrative impact could extend across $10 trillion worth of correlated trades. Furthermore, NVIDIA's influence reaches deep into South Korea's tech titans, such as Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, which are key partners supplying critical DRAM and high-bandwidth memory for its chips. Meanwhile, the past few weeks have seen strong sell-offs by investors who doubt AI's potential and question whether the massive capital spending on AI infrastructure will ever yield matching profits. As a result, NVIDIA lost its status as a $5 trillion company, with its shares now trading more than 14% below their peak. Park Jun-han, Arirang News.
Tensions between China and Japan ignited after new Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's remarks on Taiwan have worsened. Her remarks had drawn swift retaliation from Beijing, which warned of more to come. Cha Yoon-kyung reports.
China told Japan on Wednesday that it will suspend all imports of Japanese seafood in a move that signals their diplomatic dispute and economic retaliation have expanded. Beijing partially eased the restrictions on Japanese seafood almost 2 years after they had been imposed due to Tokyo's decision to release treated wastewater from its Fukushima nuclear power plant in 2023. However, China reimposed the ban this month, saying it was due to the need for further monitoring of the water release. At a briefing this month, the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced it would strengthen management and supervision of Japanese seafood imports, saying that it would immediately impose restrictions in accordance with the law if any risk factors were detected.
The Japanese side has failed to provide the technical materials that were promised. I would also like to emphasize that the recent wrongful remarks made by Japanese Prime Minister, even if Japanese aquatic products were to be exported to China, there would be no market for them.
Relations between the two countries soured recently after Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae publicly linked a Taiwan Strait crisis with the possible deployment of Japanese troops. China then urged its citizens not to study or travel to Japan after her statement, resulting in mass cancellations that could deal a sizable blow to Japan's economy. Moreover, Japanese officials fear Beijing could escalate tensions by tightening exports of rare earth elements. China controls more than 90% of the global refining capacity for these. As China has banned the screenings of upcoming Japanese films, there is also growing concern that Beijing could use trade as a weapon, as it has done in the past during disputes with other countries. Cha Yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
Tensions in the Middle East are flaring up once again after a deadly Israeli strike killed at least 13 people in Lebanon. Both sides are now trading blame over the nature of the site struck and the mounting civilian toll. Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
At least 13 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a city in southern Lebanon. Lebanon's health ministry said Tuesday that 4 others were wounded in the strike, which Israel claims targeted militants at a training compound inside the country's largest Palestinian refugee camp. Palestinian refugees make up a significant community in Lebanon, most of them descendants of families displaced during the 1948 war. Many now live in densely populated camps where groups like Hamas have maintained influence for decades. Eyewitnesses dispute Israel's account.
They struck a civilian area. There's nothing there, just a parking lot. They claim it's a military camp, but there is no camp.
The Israeli military says the compound was being used by Hamas to plan attacks against Israel, a claim Hamas has dismissed as pure fabrication and lies. The group condemned the strike, insisting it has no military facilities in Palestinian camps in Lebanon and that the site was an open sports field. The IDF said it used precision munitions, aerial surveillance and additional intelligence to minimize civilian casualties. Israel currently maintains 5 military posts inside Lebanon and regularly carries out strikes in the country's south, saying they target Hezbollah or at times Hamas operatives. Lebanese officials report that Israeli attacks have killed around 4,000 people, including civilians, and displaced more than 1.2 million residents. Israeli authorities say the hostilities have also killed more than 80 soldiers and 47 civilians on their side. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Earlier this week, Seoul proposed military talks to Pyongyang to clarify the military demarcation line. Now, the regime has not yet responded and instead issued a commentary denouncing the recently unveiled joint fact sheet between Seoul and Washington. For more on this, we invite our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung into the studio. Bo-kyung, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
So, Bo-kyung, let's start with South Korea proposing military talks to North Korea. Let's start with that.
Right, yes. So on Monday, South Korea's defense ministry proposed holding military talks with North Korea for the first time since President Lee Jae-myung took office in June. They will be to discuss how to clarify boundaries of the military demarcation line in a bid to prevent possible clashes near the inter-Korean border. You see, since North Korean leader Kim Jong-un described the two Koreas as two hostile states in the 2023, North Korean soldiers have temporarily and repeatedly crossed the MDL to get some jobs done, such as planting mines and reinforcing barbed wire fences. Every time the North Korean soldiers cross the line, the South Korean military has sent warning messages and fired warning shots. But fundamentally, defense officials believe such intrusions could have happened as the indicators, the signposts marking the land border made after the signing of the armistice in 1953 have mostly been lost. Only 200 out of a little less than 1,300 are still there. There were, of course, previous efforts to maintain these markers, with Seoul trying to repair them under the UN's supervision in 1973, but was halted after North Korean gunfire. Now, Seoul had already tried to reach out to the regime through the UN Command's communication channel, but received no response and had to resort to proposing talks through a press briefing on Monday. So if talks do take place, the most urgent agenda would be restoring the communication line.
If a military working-level meeting takes place, there will need to be steps to build mutual trust and to prevent accidental clashes in the DMZ. For that, restoring the military communication lines is urgently needed, so it will likely be a major topic of discussion.
So, Bo-kyung, like you mentioned, it's been a few days since South Korea proposed military talks to North Korea and no response yet, right?
Right, it has not responded yet. Rather, North Korea issued a commentary on Tuesday saying the faction between the U.S. and South Korea formalizes a confrontational stance against Pyongyang and that it will take countermeasures to safeguard its own sovereignty. On the U.S. approval for South Korea to build nuclear-powered submarines, the regime criticized it as a grave development that destabilizes not only the military and security landscape of the Korean Peninsula, but the entire Asia-Pacific region. And it further called South Korea's pursuit of nuclear submarines a stepping stone for its own nuclear armament, and warned that this will inevitably trigger a nuclear dominant effect and spark arms races in the region. Now, when asked how the regime's response is going to be, experts agreed that the regime is strategically ignoring Seoul's calls and will continue to.
North Korea now sees inter-Korean ties as being between two separate states, so they're taking physical steps, like putting up fences and building access roads, to create a real border. Because of that, they're not going to hold talks or do anything to improve relations.
Because they're holding to their two-state policy, agreeing to a military working-level meeting would basically mean giving that up, so it won't be easy for North Korea to respond positively.
Now, Bo-kyung, also this week, former U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that there would be virtually no way to persuade the regime to renounce its nuclear programs. What was that about?
Right. So during a forum, former top diplomat Mike Pompeo, who was in charge of nuclear talks between North Korea and the U.S. in 2018 and 2019, said that there are no carrots to engage North Korea with, and that the number of sticks is low as well.
Okay.
He added that if he could do it differently, he would focus on China and deter it from using North Korea as a strategic tool. But experts say it is not that there are no carrots to offer to the regime, but rather the U.S. needs to make a big decision to admit that the North is a nuclear state. And they also added that Pyongyang would not listen to Beijing either.
To get North Korea on board, we need to give them some level of recognition as a nuclear state and take bold steps, like pausing U.S.-South Korea military exercises, so talks can restart. That could create conditions for North Korea to at least freeze its nuclear program. But the problem is that there's no leadership willing to offer even these basic incentives right now.
In the past, there were attempts to use China's influence to achieve denuclearization or influence North Korea. But North Korea doesn't really listen to China. They focus on 주체 and independence and ignore other countries. So the only real option is for North Korea and the U.S. to make a direct deal.
Well, anything can happen under the Trump administration. Bo-kyung, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
This morning was as cold as yesterday, with temperatures below 0 degrees in many areas. The temperature rose a bit higher than yesterday during the day, but it didn't go far from 10 degrees Celsius. Seoul and Bonghagun County reached only 8 degrees. The morning temperature in Seoul will recover back to above 0 degrees, starting the day at 2 degrees, and the daytime temperature will move up to above 10 degrees as well, returning to the average temperature for this time of year. There won't be much cold until this weekend. Tomorrow morning, Chuncheon will start cold at -4 degrees, Gwangju and Busan at 4 degrees. Daily highs will rise up to 13 degrees in Seoul, 15 degrees in Gyeongju and Jeju. Less than 5 millimeters of rain is forecast in Jeju Island by dawn tomorrow. There will be about 1 centimeter of snow in the mountainous areas of Jeju Island. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is all we have for tonight. I'm Kim Dami. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching and good night.